Welcome back to the Make a PB podcast. I'm Carolina Sotomayor, your podcast host and Reiki womb healer. Today, we're talking with a dear friend of mine here, local to the Omaha, Nebraska area. She's a fellow Reiki master and teacher, and she's an incredible healer. So, welcome Laura Beck to the podcast. Laura, how are you today?
I'm great. Thank you for inviting me. I'm
Thanks for
excited.
being here. I am so excited to talk to you because you're so talented and you are making such movements in our state. And I just think you're such a bright light in our Reiki community. And also, I'm so excited about what we're going to talk about today, which is why I learned Reiki for my birth. And I think that one is I love all things about birth and Reiki, motherhood, fertility. But when we combine babies and Reiki, particularly, that's my favorite. So, can you give us a little intro about who you are, who you serve, and what you do?
Yeah, so like you said, I am located locally in Omaha, Nebraska, but I do offer Reiki treatments across the globe and online classes as well. So I serve all over. I actually have previous background in a corporate technology company, and so I have a lot of friends all over the world because I used to
Girl,
travel and work
talking
with
my
them.
language.
A lot of my clients are, all over and they're from different walks of life, different ages, different backgrounds. And so I love to kind of show them Reiki, and I do a lot of education really at this point. So that's why I kind of started locally this group for our state to start bringing community together. And that's what I love to do. I love to bring people together. I love to find the right people to bring together. And I'd like to say I'm really good at knowing what people's gifts are and their strengths are. And I kind of put like a little puzzle, put little pieces together and say, hey, this person can help with this. And so, I started my business at full time in 2022, and I wanted to teach and practice, but I've been practicing Reiki since 2014, 2015 is when I found Reiki. And that kind of was where my journey began, and how I, after my first son, knew that I needed to start doing this and how it was helpful for my daughter when she was born.
So, it was your second birth that you learned Reiki for. So, can you share what you're comfortable with? Like, what happened with your first birth that wanted you to change your experience with the birth? Like, you wanted a different birth experience than the first? Can you elaborate on that?
So I think my first birth drove me towards Reiki because it was so stressful and it was really hard on my body. So I had preeclampsia.
Oh,
And, even going back before this, when I was probably, I would say 20 and then 22, I was hospitalized because I had really bad pains in my lower abdomen. And I didn't know what they were. And they did a lot of tests on me. And, they thought it was Crohn's. They couldn't figure it out. And then my gastroenterologist called me one day when I came home from the hospital after 5 days and said, hey, you have some cysts on your ovaries. You might want to go get those checked out. And so from that point on, I was like, okay, I was diagnosed with PCOS. I was diagnosed with endometriosis. And I had a lot of issues that were causing a lot of pain. And so from that point on, I had two laparoscopies that really went in to cauterize a lot of that, the endometriosis issues. I had a fibroid. So the second laparoscopy, I was actually going in and I had to sign paperwork to get a hysterectomy because it could have impacted that. And so, I was 22.
it's
I
so
wasn't
hard,
I
especially when you're
wasn't
starting your
married,
life.
or I was in college. I wasn't even thinking about getting pregnant at that point, but I was told you might not ever be able to get pregnant after that. So at that point, my journey really started at that point with all of this because I had this belief now that I probably was never going to get pregnant. Everyone that I was serious with after that point, I said, are you open to adoption? You know, because I might not be able to get pregnant, like how important is that to you? And so when my son came along and I got married, and a couple months after, we got married, I removed my IUD because I was like, this is going to take forever to get pregnant. We're going to try and try and try. And, it might not happen. And my husband was obviously totally okay with whatever happened because that's one of the questions, that I asked him. And 2 months later, I got pregnant. And I was so amazed that I got pregnant so quickly. I think it was because my brain was just convinced that I was never going to get pregnant. I was just so amazed that I got pregnant so quickly. I was in shock, probably for the whole length of my pregnancy, honestly. But what happened after I got pregnant is I was so sick. Like, just like, I don't want to be pregnant now. So it went from I'm never going to get pregnant to now I don't even want to be pregnant because I was so sick. And I was sick the whole pregnancy. And it was really bad. And my blood pressure was really bad. And then he wasn't growing. So he had growth issues. And I was put on bed rest. And he ended up being induced 35 weeks. He was in the NICU for 2 weeks. And because I was on bed rest, I was on FMLA for 10 weeks already. And we were in the NICU for 2 weeks. So when we were coming home, I had to go back to work. And when I went back to work, I had a new job because they did layoffs. So I had a new job and I had to travel. So I had this new baby who was a preemie baby. He was like 5 or 6 pounds because he was born at 4 pounds. So he wasn't anything of a person.
This is like the recipe for the perfect disaster. If
It
like,
is. And I was going
how
crazy.
did you get through this? Did you stay with the job?
So I did. I stayed at the job. I don't even know how I got through it, honestly. I really don't. My husband and I started doing shifts because my son would cry nonstop if you put him down. So we did shifts. So I would come home from work and I was going into work at the time, right? So we weren't working from home or doing any of that.
What year is this?
This is 2013.
Okay.
So I was coming home at 5. I would go to sleep right away. My husband would take the baby and take care of the baby because I pick him up from daycare, and he would wake me up at 1 o'clock in the morning. He would go to sleep and then I would stay up all morning and go to work, take care of the baby, go to work, drop him off at daycare. And then I would go see him at lunch and come home. And we did that for 6 months. And we just did shifts. We did shifts. And when I left, my parents helped my husband with the baby. So I would try to leave and not spend as much time as I could, right? So I would fly in super early in the morning, for instance, go to work for that week, and then I would fly back right after. Like I would not stay any extra minute longer than I had to. And it was hard because I was like pumping in the airport and it was crazy. It was really crazy. And I got to a point to where I became so depressed, I think, that things just started to go downhill really fast. And I am not a person that likes to take medication because my body reacts so horribly to it. So I started looking for things like, what can I do to help with stress and manage anxiety and do all of these things that I need help with? And I was doing AM and PM yoga when I could. I was meditating, anything holistic you can think of, I was doing. And then I typed in one day in Google, I don't even know what I typed in. I must have typed in something that helped with stress because nothing was really working. I mean, it helped, but it was like, And Reiki came up. And I was like, that's interesting. That's the name of a CD that I have. So 2 years before that, I bought a CD called Reiki because it was very relaxing, but I thought it was the name of a group. Like I thought like Reiki was the name of a group.
You I
And I
love
was
this
like,
story so
Reiki.
much.
And I was like, wait a minute, I have a CD that's called Reiki. What is Reiki? And I was like reading through all this stuff about how it's like a healing modality. Like I was totally clueless. Like I was clueless. So I was like, okay, Google Reiki, find a practitioner. Like, how do I get this? What is this about? And at this point, my son, he was a baby still. And I found a lady and she was like 10 minutes from my house and I didn't know what this modality was. Like I was like, what is Reiki? This sounds really weird. I told my husband because it was at a house, right? So I like map, it's like a house in the middle of a neighborhood. I'm like, I'm
You're like,
going
"Am
to
I gonna
this
go in and
house.
die? Is this
I
sketch?"
was like, okay, if I'm not here, if I'm not back here in an hour and a
Search
half,
party in
call
20
somebody.
hours.
This is exactly where I'm going. So I pull in and it's like
I had my
it's like
husband wait in the parking lot.
yeah, because it is like I don't know what I'm doing. So I pull into this like it's like a duplex, and she has like a paper. There's like a front door, but there's like a window above the door, and it says it's like hand drawn, and it says the Reiki place. So I go up and I open the door,
Is that here in
and
Omaha?
yeah, it's like
I have to Google this after.
her house. I don't know if she still practices. Her name's Natalia Pizitskaya. And, this little lady with long red hair, glasses, she opens the door and she's like, "Hi, come in." And she like tells me to go up the stairs, and I see the table. It's like in a living room, in the middle of a living room in front of a fireplace, and there's two couches on the side, two red couch like pleather couches on the side. They might have been real leather, I don't know. Two couches on the side. She's like, "Have a seat in the one of the couches." So I sit down, and she's like, "So, have you heard of Reiki?" And I'm like, "Not really." And I was like super scared and nervous, and like just like thinking of like all the exits, right? Like there's a door over there, there's a
Was
front,
she
go back up.
warm?
She was. I mean, when I saw her, I felt better, but it was still kind of creepy, right? I was still like, okay, I don't know what to
It's somebody's house,
expect.
yeah.
Yeah.
A stranger's house.
And it kind of smelled like she just cooked dinner, it was just a very
Okay.
weird vibe. But I sat down and she kind of told me what she was going to do. And she kind of explained Reiki and how it was just a relaxation technique, and that she was going to place her hands on my body for long periods of time. And she's going to start on my head and work my way down to the feet. And she had some music playing already in the background. And she's like, "You're just going to lay there, and I'm going to put a blanket on you, and then we'll be done." And I'm like, "Okay, that sounds fine." So I laid on the table, and I literally felt like I was floating off the table, and there were 100 people in the room. I felt like there were like different people coming and going, touching me. And so I through the treatment, I didn't really enjoy the first treatment because I was like freaking out. And then her hands were super hot, right? So we always talk about how Reiki, your hands get super hot, but I didn't know that. Like I didn't know any of this stuff was happening. And she didn't tell me to expect any of this, right? So I was like, "Does she have like those heating pad, like warmers on her hands?" Like, cause it was hot, like really hot on my eyes and on my body. And so I was like being super analytical about the whole process. Like, what is that? What does she have? Are there other people here that I don't know about touching
That's pretty
me?
typical, especially if you
But
don't
it
know what to
is.
expect. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very all the normal things that we know about now as Reiki practitioners, but I had no idea. And I was like freaked out. And then I started feeling like I was like being lifted off of the table at one point. And
That's happened to me a couple
I
times.
was
That
like,
happens to my
"What is
husband
going
every single time he gets
on?"
Reiki.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was just really freaky, right? Because I haven't experienced any of these things before ever in my life. And so I didn't go back to her for about a year, maybe, because I was very calm at the end of it. And I actually had to sit on her table and drink like 2 glasses of water because I was so calm, like the calmest I've ever probably been in my life. Like I was like, I couldn't drive. I was so out of it. I was like in another place. And so finally I left, and I was just freaked out, I think, because it was a lot. Like it was just a lot to take in. But it helped me. It helped me. And it really, after that point, then things started getting better. My son started, getting older. He was eating at that point, solid foods. And so things just started getting better.
What happened with your
But
career?
I didn't want my career got better too. I got a new job.
Was it
I'm
local? You didn't have to travel anymore?
I stayed. I still had to travel, but it wasn't as bad. So it was, it was fine. And I was just traveling more so to like Arizona. So it was like trips that I could take. So it was really great. I had a great boss. It was just great. Everything just got better, right?
That's amazing.
Naturally. But then I started, getting stressed because I was working a lot. I had a toddler, and almost a toddler. I guess he was like 1 at that point. And we started thinking about having another baby. And I was like, I do not want to have another baby. That was a lot. It was a lot on my body. It was a
Yeah.
lot. And
Yeah.
I was scared because, what if the next baby wasn't growing like he was, or maybe something else happened, and he had a cord wrapped around his arm. And so we had some issues with his heart beating, while I was delivering. I was just really
There's a
scared. Like
lot of
my first
variables
birth
that you
made
had
me,
to
yeah.
process. Yeah.
So I was just very scared after my first pregnancy, and I didn't know how that would affect our marriage, if we had to do all of that again and do the shifts again,
Nobody talks about that though. The
just
weight of a
managing
traumatic
that.
birth and pregnancy and like the first year on your marriage. I felt like my husband and I had gotten that advice was like baby proof your marriage before he comes out.
That is so
And,
true. More people
and
need to talk about that.
more people need to talk about that. I feel like when my birth story is a little bit different, but still traumatic. I didn't feel like I came up for air until about 18 months old, until Holly was 18 months old. Like it was the first stint was like learning how to navigate, how to live, how to work, how to care for him. Like I didn't even know how to change a diaper, let alone give him a bath. But then like the breastfeeding and the pumping and like feeling confident, go to the store with him. And just like I was
Mhm.
scared of everything or someone touching him. I had like these irrational postpartum fears that came from PPA and PPD. And
Mhm.
I love that you talked about the marriage piece because that is a key reason why we didn't have anymore, actually. It was so bad. The pregnancy was
Mhm.
so bad, and the birth was so bad, and the postpartum was so bad. It took us a few years to make the final decision before my husband had a vasectomy, but it is the reason why we didn't have any more children.
Mhm. Well, and you're different people after that happens to you. You're not the
100%.
same person. And it
Yeah.
happened to us 2 months after we got married. So we
Oh
went
my.
from being a
So
newlywed couple to thinking we have lots of time to get pregnant. 'Cause I mean, get pregnant to not even maybe even having children to Laura's pregnant and she's really sick all the time and having to work through that. And it's like we weren't even the same people at the end of it, we weren't the same person. And then not only the marriage part of it, but just taking care of yourself. It's like, oh my gosh, I haven't like taken care of myself at all. And learning how to do that again took me years to say, okay, yeah, maybe you should start focusing on your health and what you do and what you eat. And that's where I started. And I think Reiki helped me on that direction to bring that into my awareness that I didn't realize it. I think I took it for granted to say, okay, you need to start eating better. You need to start taking vitamins again. You need to start moving your body. You need to start, I don't know, just doing your nails,
loving
you know,
yourself. I still
just
need to get my
taking care
nails
of
done.
yourself. So then we decided to have our second baby. And around that time, I had already gone back to Natalia and done more Reiki sessions with her. And I started going to her. The second time I went to her, I started going to her every week. And then I started taking classes with her. So it was just a Nasui Reiki class, very Jikiden Reiki, so very traditional Reiki. You get in the dark room and you do the attunements, they blow on you and do all the other shady situation. But I started going to
That
her
was
on
the
Wednesday
trippiest
nights.
attunement I've ever gotten. Was the traditional one was the first time. For anyone that doesn't know, an attunement is the actual installation, or for lack of a better word, of the Reiki energy into your body. And there's this whole ritual that the Reiki master teacher has to do in order to install the energy into you so you have the ability to give Reiki to yourself or others depending on the level that you're getting. An attunement will happen at every level, and there's different levels of Reiki if you're new to Reiki. And there's different lineages, which means like Reiki is from Japan. So traditional Reiki is the original form of Reiki going back as far as back as you can go. And then all of the newer versions of Reiki or lineages of Reiki have stemmed or evolved from that original form. I
Mhm.
think that's the most articulate, condensed way I think I can say that, if
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Yes.
Correct me
Yes.
if any of that was wrong.
No, that was perfect. And I mean, it's been around for 100 years, so
Yeah, it's pretty legit.
it's established, but it's very new, right? So I started actually going to her, and I was just going to her because it was helping me, right? So it was like I went to her every Wednesday night. It was a Reiki share, basically a weekly Reiki share, and then her other students would come and go. And that's how I started meeting people, and that's how I started practicing, and then I started learning my own gifts. And things just started getting better. And, it's not like I woke up one day and I was like, oh, my life is wonderful, rainbows and unicorns, but it was just slowly, progressively moving in a better direction. And then we decided to have another baby because I haven't really told too many people this. I told my son this, but when I was a little girl, I used to have a dream that I was like like on a berm and there was like a stone wall and there was me and this boy and this little girl and we would play all the time. And I had this dream since I was very little. And as I grew, but the kids stayed the same. And I never knew who it was. And I was like, I thought it was my sister, but it didn't look like my sister. And I was like, who is this boy? Because I don't have any brothers. Is that like one of my cousins? But it didn't really look like them. And so as I grew up, I continued to have this dream. It's the same dream. Nothing more happens. The same thing. We're playing on this berm. And I realized after having my son and doing Reiki that I think that these are my kids that I'm dreaming about. And I've been dreaming about them and playing with them and with them they've been with me my whole life. And so I would told my husband, I'm like, I think I need a little girl because I had my boy. And so I knew she was there. Like I knew she was there at that point, and I knew it was her, and I knew she had to come. And so I said, we need to have this little girl. And so I got pregnant with her right away. So I was like, it's going to take us a while. We need to get going. Because even though we got pregnant right away at first, I was still in that belief system because it was just ingrained into my soul that you are going to have difficulty having children. Because I still had PCOS. I still had all the side effects and things that are going. I still have it till this day. But I was still under the belief system that it's going to take us a while. We better, get going. And I got pregnant right away. And my mom, oh my gosh, I got to tell you this. My
Tell me.
mom, when I told my parents, we went to a restaurant, we told my parents that we were pregnant for the first time. My mom looks at my husband and she goes, "You're such a stud." So we always say it's my husband, it's all him, even though
I
that has
can't.
nothing to
If my
probably
mom
do
ever
with
said
it.
that to my
I
husband, I would
know. I know.
I would
It was
die.
embarrassing.
My
My
husband
sister's
is
like,
so reserved.
"Mom."
He's so reserved. I can't imagine. Wait, I have to know, what restaurant was this at?
It was that restaurant downtown. What was it called?
It's irrelevant probably, but we always go to
Um,
Olive Garden. I can't imagine,
no, it
someone
was
saying
that
that at,
Louisiana
an Olive
restaurant
Garden.
downtown. We always
Anyway,
laughed that it was my husband. So I got pregnant with her, but at that point I was doing Reiki and I knew Reiki at that point, and I was doing Reiki on my son. So I was teaching my son Reiki as well during this. So he was 1 years old. He would get an ouchie, and I said, okay. At that point, I was practicing Holy Fire Reiki because I was taking more and more classes, because I was just Reiki was my thing at that. It was my
for all the
hobby.
listeners, Holy Fire is the most popular lineage of Reiki that's pretty much mainstream across the world, and it's the most commonly taught lineage that is, if you are gonna learn Reiki, that's what most people learn because it's so widespread and taught.
Yeah, and there's a good structure to it, right? So the classes
Yeah, they
are
have a
laid
good
out
manual,
really
they have a good
well.
education behind it.
Yeah. So I think the structure of that class is what draws a lot of Westerners to it because there is structure to it and you know what you're kind of getting into.
A lot
But
of other Reiki education lacks the spiritual education that comes along that is provided in Holy Fire. A lot of it's just the attunement and maybe minimal chakra
mhm,
education, if that. I feel like, yeah, what you said is 100%. There's a
I
good
agree with
structure of
that
the
too.
education behind it.
Yeah, I agree with that too. I think it is very spiritual and also very self-guided and intuitive for you too. So it empowers you to kind of be and use your gifts and not kind of force you to be like
A
whatever,
cookie
that
cutter.
other Reiki teacher looks like, but to
Mhm,
really explore energy a little bit more. And
mhm.
as a teacher, tells you to do that, right? So I tell my students to do that. I want them to develop their gifts. But as I was practicing Holy Fire and teaching my son Holy Fire, I started doing Holy Fire on my baby because I knew she was there. And I knew she was there before I knew I was pregnant. I started sending her Reiki, right? I knew she was there. I could feel that she was there and I would talk to her. And I think that's another thing that's really important too is that people that want to get pregnant and are hoping to get pregnant, we all have gifts and we all are very intuitive beings. But I think to know that you can talk to that baby and to communicate with them and to my daughter, I was like, okay, look, when stuff came up, I was like, look, you got a plan for this. I was talking to her doing a prep talk. But when I got pregnant, then I started doing Reiki on her and I started giving her Reiki. And, my pregnancy, I was still a little sick, but my pregnancy was so much better because it was what I would consider normal. I didn't have my own health issues going on at that point. I was fine and I went full term and I had a natural birth and it was just so different. It was so different. And a lot of what Reiki gave me too is a lot of the worry was released. I didn't have that worry like I did with the first pregnancy. I was constantly worried with my first pregnancy. It was just overwhelming amount of worry. And what Reiki teaches us is not to worry. And so that I think might have been the biggest benefit to having Reiki with my second birth and giving that to her too. She is a very different child than my first child.
Tell
And
me
I
more.
always say
Is
it's
it
because
very
of the
similar
Reiki.
to the baby you dreamt in your dreams, though?
Well, that it was just like the dream was just like a snippet of time, right? We're just playing and we're
Mm,
laughing and we're running around. So it wasn't like I got to know their personalities. It was just like I
okay.
knew that they were fun and they were silly and we were having fun. And they are both very much like that today, right? They're both very silly and they just say crazy things that they crack me up all the time. They're like my little own comedians that I have. But that's all it was, right? We were just having fun and playing and being silly. But, my daughter is very laid back, very calm. She gets upset, but she lets it go really quickly. My son, he will hang on to that for hours. If, he will be mad and his emotions are just like, it's hard to calm him down, and he worries about things. He'll mention things and he worries about things. So they're just very different people as well. And I say it's the Reiki because she's a calm person. She's a calm spirit. And
I have to say that too. My son is a very calm person. I am not. Like, I get excited easily. Also, if I get angry, it takes me a while to like release it. It takes me sometimes, especially if I'm triggered, it takes me a while for that to dissipate. But I feel like I get angered less and less as I heal deeper, deeper.
mhm.
But I think that for me, that's an ancestor pattern. I think anger runs really deep in our family
Yeah. And
on
holding
both
on to it is a
sides.
protection. It's just a protection
Yeah.
habit too, right? So if you let that go, you have that belief that you'll get hurt more. And so, and I think maybe my son has a little bit of that too,
Yeah.
because it was hard for him. It was hard for him in my womb. It was hard for him when he came out. I mean, it was, so he does get really angry and have that rage too. And he doesn't let it go. I really think Reiki helped, and not just, during the pregnancy and helping it, but I really think it helped me in my own journey of, okay, I'm ready to have this baby, talking to her, sending her Reiki helped me and my soul and my relationship with my husband at that point because he knew about Reiki, right? Because I learned it when my son was around 1 and practicing it on him and then telling him, I'd hear my husband say, give it Reiki, give it Reiki. And so he would encourage him to do Reiki too. So we were all in this Reiki world at that point. And it's still to this day, it helps them, right? So, I mean, they're 10 and 6 now. So they still give
Oh,
Reiki
those are really
and,
fun ages. Our babies are close in age. Mine just turned 7. He just turned
oh,
7 this
yeah,
weekend.
really
Yeah. Or
close.
actually Monday, but we had his party over the weekend. So, yeah, he was born December 2016. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So mine's in first grade right now. My daughter's in first grade right now.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Us too. I want to touch on a point that I'm seeing here. I wanted to ask so, there is a connection scientifically, is like when our grandmas were pregnant with our mothers, we were a cell inside of that fetus. So pregnancies can profoundly influence somebody's life in the womb stages of even the conception in the womb. Development is so important. In your Reiki career, have you experienced helping women in their pregnancies or gotten to know babies inside the womb? I always love to hear other Reiki practitioners and Reiki masters influence because I
yeah,
do.
I
And I think it's the most
actually,
fascinating thing ever.
so I sometimes see the babies before people get pregnant.
Yeah,
So
me
I
too.
see them like as a kid outside of like an energy outside of them. And
I
so
see
sometimes I'm able
dots.
to share. I see dots too. And they come in when I'm doing Reiki actually over the womb. Sometimes I see pink and blue dots. And I've been doing this for a while now, so I've gotten a lot of validation because at first I'm like, I don't know, I'm just guessing here that there's like
Yeah,
a blue
no, I
dot
totally get the
coming.
feeling. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But I'll see them, right? I'll see them before they're there, and I'll also see the dots. I'll see a pink dot come up and then a blue dot come up. So I'm like, okay, they're having a daughter first and then a son next. And then so I'll see these dots. Or I'll also, when I'm doing Reiki on someone, I can kind of feel always when someone's like ovulating or someone is kind of prepared to, in the preparation stage, to have a child. And so, what that feels like to me when I'm doing Reiki on someone is I will get kind of a swirling sensation in the palm of my hand. And, afterwards, I'll talk to them about what I felt and what I think it is. And quite often that's the case, they're kind of in those stages. And then I've also been able to, when I felt a baby or they've told me that they have a baby, what I'll do in sessions is I'll actually balance the chakras of the baby with the mom. So I'll balance the baby chakras and I'll specifically send the baby Reiki and give the baby Reiki and connect the stomach with the head of the mom and give them both Reiki at the same time. So those are some of the things that I do, but I love pregnant mamas. They're one of my favorite groups to do Reiki on. Because it's such an amazing feeling to feel those two energies, because the way I feel energy is I'm a feeler. So it's almost like a fingerprint. Everybody's energy is very different. And so you can kind of, how I feel it is, this is the mama's energy and this is the baby's energy. But then there's also a connected energy between the two of them. So it's like a third energy, but it's like a shared energy between them. And the same thing happens when I feel like couples, like I can feel like a
I feel the
shared
same.
energy
It's
that's been
like
created.
one time this was like my spirit guides, my Reiki guides showed this to me, like, was when I was giving a couple Reiki, was they're like, "Look at their relationship chakras." And I was just like, so I was
Oh,
like them as
that
an
makes sense.
entity, like their relationship. So
Yes.
technically their partnership, their entity, their love, like look at them and how grounded are they? Like what are they
Mm-hmm.
creating together? How strong do they feel like they are together? What is their love? It was like a connection point. How do they communicate? How trusting are they of each other and their relationship? And then like how much are they connected to this? And it was just like it blew my mind
Yeah.
at the moment.
But they also have their own energy, right? So they
Right,
all,
it's separate
because
that
we have
together that
shared
it's
energies
this
and then our own separate
shared
energy to
thing,
work on
yeah.
as
Yeah,
well.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
everything needs to be worked on. So
yeah. You're a magical human.
thank you. You are too.
Thank you. So, if someone was asking for advice and they were attempting to conceive or get pregnant in the new year, what advice would you give them?
So, the advice that I always give people is to start already believing that you have that baby. They already are there, they already exist. So, you're going to start talking to them. You're going to start praying for them or sending them energy, whatever that looks like for you. You're going to start meditating and you're just going to make them a part of your life, just as if they are already here. So, it's not a matter of, I'm trying to get pregnant. Will I ever get pregnant? It's, I already have this energy with me. They already exist. They're already here to start talking with them. And so I always tell my clients to live as if they're already here because they are, right? They already exist. They're just not in the manifested form. And to start looking at it as if you already have a baby, but now, okay, how do we work together, baby, to get you manifested? What are some things I need to tell you about this world? What are some things I've learned about this world and sharing that experience? And then also learning how to do Reiki on yourself, learning how to do that and how to balance your chakras and how to get yourself ready and how to use Reiki to help yourself and to get you to a place where you need to be. Because that worry is very strong energy and it can impact you from being able to get pregnant. So, doing Reiki and using Reiki and just placing your hands on your stomach and healing yourself and sending you that healing energy and reminding yourself, okay, I need to not worry. I know it's hard, very hard, but not to worry. And the less I worry about getting pregnant, the more the surprise will happen.
I love that. Can you share with our listeners where they can find you on the internet and how they can connect with you?
Yes. Yeah, so I have a website. It's reikiwithlaura.com, ReikiWithlaura.
We'll link it in
And
the show
I
notes.
teach and have classes and treatments, and I sell fun natural healing products as well. So you can find me there.
Perfect. Well, thank you, Laura, for sharing your story. I know that so many people are going to be so profoundly impacted by it. And my listeners, thank you so much for listening to this episode. We want to hear from you. I particularly want to know what you thought of this episode. Please send me a voice note using SpeakPipe, which is the first line in our show notes called Ask Carolina Anything. That is where you can leave us a 90-second voice note letting us know your thoughts of this episode and any topics you want to cover, want me to cover on an upcoming episode. Until next time, my friends, let the Reiki flow. Frustrated being told you are fine by your doctor, exhausted from negative pregnancy tests every month, wanting a deeper connection on your fertility journey with your spirit baby? The Make a Baby membership is exactly what you need. Using Reiki will help you connect to your spirit baby, heal the trapped emotions blocking fertility, and support you in our life-changing community. With over 90 Reiki babies, we invite you to try the Make a Baby membership for free. Check it out in the show notes. Let's get you pregnant.